Okay, in crisis times like this, everybody becomes a political analyst, a financial analyst, an economic analyst. I'm going to pretend to be an economic analyst for the next few minutes. There's quite a lot of information doing the rounds about how the world is contracting economic wise at the moment. There are numbers being profiled by various institutions, including the IMF, World Bank, the Department of Treasury here in South Africa, the Minister of Finance, and many other institutions. From my assessment, the world will contract certainly by as much as 15%. This number will obviously depend and change according to nuances of particular economies. In South Africa, conservative estimates indicate 6.1%, but this number was indicated 2 weeks ago when we were still on level 5 hard lockdown. Currently, we're on level 4 lockdown, and it's not so different from level 5, except that some companies have been allowed to open. There's an expanded list of companies that are operating to stimulate economic activity beyond the essential services. We now see a situation where large companies, especially those that were highly geared, that had high leverage on their balance sheets, are struggling to meet recurring costs, salaries, and so forth. And measures are being implemented by their various management teams, and obviously with advice from the board to cut costs, to cut any cash-heavy activities that they had initially planned. So you see a lot of delay in implementing infrastructure projects, expansions have been put on hold, and staff have subsequently been offered either voluntary retrenchment or being offered lower salaries to try and reduce costs and pressure on cash flow. There are imperatives to be drawn given what's happening for the individual person. This is what I will try and talk about now. There's no question that in the coming months and possibly years, 2 or 3, whoever has cash will be king. Whoever has a cash pile is king. And it's not easy for most people to actually have cash savings. But this is a critical time for you to have a cash pile in your bank account to cover any short-term gaps, to also be able to cover any possible future shocks in income. The world will struggle to find a new equilibrium. And in trying to find an equilibrium, there'll be a lot of changes which will affect each and every one of us. And I would like to perhaps share my thoughts on how, at an individual level, you could adjust to these new imperatives, to this new world economy. Cut your consumption. There's no two ways about it. Look at how much you spend, even on the smallest things. Cut your consumption. Stop buying things you don't need. Do not buy new clothes. You don't need those right now. You don't need to upgrade your car. You don't need a new phone. You don't need to eat maybe what you were eating a few months ago. Look for cheaper alternatives. Find no-name brands for goods and services that you could possibly get at a cheaper cost. Try and avoid the payment holidays being offered, especially here in South Africa. I think the COVID-19 relief funds, some people are using them to delay their credit card payments or their car payments or their mortgage payments. The trick is, in this particular arrangement, you will be expected to pay more interest in future, as the interest that you are foregoing to pay now will be capitalized as part of your loan. So you increase your future payments and create a burden in future with income not guaranteed. By cutting down costs, you'll be able to free up some funds from your income statement and try and transfer that to the balance sheet. If you can accommodate it with the cost that you have saved from your recurrent spend, try and use that to pay off some of your leverage so that you have a lesser leverage per your income statement, which can be fragile or will be fragile as the world finds its equilibrium. The world will not find equilibrium quite easily. There's a lot of volatility around. As you can tell, I mean, foreign currencies and commodity prices are fluctuating, in some cases from even negative to whatever spectrum because of the volatility. There's depressed demand, so if you had a small business, expect to get lower revenue than normal. There's, however, a silver lining. There's lower cost of capital. We have reduced, the government rather has reduced the repo rate to 4.25%, which makes your cost of capital, especially for secured lending, at about 7.5%, 9%, being the prime. For unsecured lending, your personal loans, it's still unsustainably high at 17.5%. If you are going to be offered this loan by a bank, if you have a good credit record, be very careful about accessing personal loans, overdraft facilities, and a higher credit card limit, because the cost is still quite unsustainably high, and it will create more pressure on your income statement as you spend a sizable amount to service that debt. So we should be careful with that. I always say, don't waste a crisis. A crisis is an opportunity to rejig your life. It's an opportunity to rearrange your life. And in this particular case, it's an opportunity to rearrange your way of life, how you spend, how you transfer your income statement to your balance sheet. That should be your priority right now. Your leveraged assets are possibly going to lose value, especially your cars, especially your houses, apartments, and so forth. That apartment that you have, that you bought perhaps at 1.2 million in Midrand or Sunninghill Hill or Morningside, is going to be affected by the depressed demand in houses, as people don't have as much disposable income and as people put their growth plans on hold. So you're going to have an asset that you can't get rid of to get more liquidity onto your balance sheet. So you probably have to find cuts elsewhere to find equilibrium in your own finances. So it's going to be interesting how a lot of us are going to adjust our lives, are going to adjust the way we spend, are going to adjust the way we live on a day-to-day basis. I don't see us being able to afford the popping bottles lifestyle we had last year. Things have to change, and we have to ride this tide. Big as it is, we have to ride it. And whoever is able to break even after 2 or 3 years will be prime for the growth that will come as the world finds its equilibrium. I would say that behavioral change is imminent if you have not applied it already. It's either it will be forced or it will be a voluntary behavioral change. Let's stay strong and ride the COVID wave and emerge leaders in 2 years. Thank you.